The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. 500 representatives from across the galaxy sat in stunned silence as the holographic image of Ambassador Park Tae-ho flickered above the central platform. His face was calm, but his eyes held something that made even the most powerful beings in the galaxy feel uneasy. "The human delegation formally withdraws from all galactic affairs," Park Tae-ho said, his voice steady and clear. "We will no longer participate in council meetings, trade negotiations, or diplomatic missions. Do not attempt contact with human territories. Do not approach our systems. This is our final communication." The image vanished, leaving only empty air where humanity's voice had been for 3 centuries. Councillor Veltar was the first to break the silence. His massive form rose from his seat, 4 arms gesturing wildly. "This is madness. They cannot simply leave. Who will mediate the border disputes? Who will handle the trade agreements?" "Perhaps they are bluffing," said Councillor Zephyrim, her crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights. "Humans are emotional creatures. Give them time to cool down, and they will return." But Ambassador Kexton, eldest of the council, shook his ancient head. "I have watched humans for 200 years. They do not bluff about such things. When they make a promise, they keep it. When they make a threat, they mean it." Across the galaxy, the immediate effects were subtle. Ships that had been docked at stations quietly departed. Human citizens began packing their belongings. Human businesses closed their doors with polite notices that they would not be reopening. On the trade station, Nexus Prime, Station Master Korveth watched in growing panic as the human quarter emptied. Dr. Kim So-min had been the station's head of medical research for 30 years. Her team had developed cures for 17 different alien diseases. Now her laboratory stood empty, her research locked away behind coded doors that no one else could open. "She cannot simply leave," Korveth muttered, staring at the abandoned lab. "The Velthari plague outbreak in Sector 7 needs her expertise." But Dr. Kim So-min was already gone, along with every other human on the station. They had left quietly, without anger or harsh words. They had simply packed their things and walked away. In the military sector of the galaxy, the effects were more immediate. Captain Lee Hyun-woo commanded the anti-piracy fleet that protected the major trade routes. His ships were fast, his crews were skilled, and his success rate was perfect. Pirates feared him more than death itself. Admiral Kexnar received the message that Captain Lee's entire fleet was withdrawing to human space. "But the outer rim routes," he protested to his communication officer. "The pirates will be back within days." Captain Lee left detailed patrol schedules and tactical recommendations, the officer replied. "He says we should be able to manage with our existing forces." Admiral Kexnar looked at the tactical reports. On paper, it seemed simple enough, but something about the neat, organized files made him nervous. Human solutions always looked simple until you tried to implement them yourself. On the industrial world of Gamma Centauri, Chief Engineer Nam Ji-hai was shutting down the massive fusion reactors that powered half the planet. The local engineering team watched in confusion as she sealed access panels and locked control systems. "The reactors are stable," she explained to Chief Administrator Thexelar. "The automated systems will handle routine maintenance for approximately 6 months. After that, you will need to perform manual inspections." 6 months? Thexelar's voice cracked. "But you have maintained these systems for 20 years. Surely the automation can handle longer." Nam Ji-hee shook her head. "These systems require intuitive adjustments that cannot be programmed. You will need to learn to feel when something is wrong, not just read the diagnostic reports." The administrator stared at the complex control panels. The human engineer made it look easy, but the systems were more complicated than anything his people had ever built. "What if we make mistakes?" "Then you will learn from them," Nam Ji-hai replied, "as we all do." In the council chambers, emergency sessions ran day and night. Representatives who had barely spoken to each other in decades now found themselves desperately trying to fill the gaps that humans had left behind. The Kethari delegate approached, his Mordan counterpart for the first time in 50 years. Their species had been at war for centuries before humans arrived to mediate their conflicts. Now, with no human peacekeepers to maintain the buffer zones, old tensions were surfacing. "Perhaps we can work together," the Kethari suggested nervously. "For the good of both our peoples." The Mordan representative's response was cold. Your people still occupy the mining rights that were ours by ancient claim. The humans forced us to accept your presence. Now they are gone. Trade negotiations that humans had handled for generations were falling apart. The complex agreements that had taken years to build were crumbling in days. Representatives who had relied on human translators and mediators found themselves unable to communicate effectively with species they had dealt with for centuries. Counselor Ithquen of the Science Directorate was reviewing the list of human-managed projects when she realized the true scope of the problem. Humans had not just been participants in galactic civilization. They had been the invisible foundation that held everything together. Weather control systems on 16 different worlds were managed by human atmospheric specialists. The navigation beacons that guided ships through dangerous space routes were maintained by human technicians. Even the food distribution networks that prevented famines were coordinated by human logistics experts. "How did we become so dependent on them?" she asked her aide. "They were very good at their jobs," the aide replied. "And they never said no when we asked for help." Meanwhile, the first expedition to human space was being prepared. Admiral Vexitar volunteered to lead a diplomatic mission to Earth, demanding that humans explain their sudden withdrawal. "They cannot simply abandon their responsibilities," he declared. "We will make them see reason." But when the expedition reached the edge of human territory, something strange happened. Their long-range sensors detected vast fleets of human ships moving inward toward the Sol system. Civilian transports, military vessels, research ships, and massive cargo haulers were all converging on humanity's home system. "They are evacuating everything," reported the sensor operator. "Every human presence outside their core systems is being withdrawn." Admiral Vextar ordered his fleet to follow at a respectful distance. They would observe and report back to the Council. But as they crossed an invisible boundary marked only by a few navigation buoys, their signals home suddenly stopped transmitting. The fleet tried to reverse course, but their navigation systems showed impossible readings. The stars were wrong. The hyperspace beacons were silent. It was as if they had crossed into a completely different universe where the normal laws of galactic civilization no longer applied. Back on the Council station, the last transmission from Admiral Vextar's fleet was replayed over and over. His voice was calm but confused as he reported their situation. Then there was static, and then nothing at all. The humans had not just withdrawn from galactic affairs. They had disappeared, taking with them 3 centuries of knowledge, expertise, and solutions that the galaxy had taken for granted. And for the first time in living memory, the great powers of the galaxy began to realize that they might be in serious trouble. 6 months had passed since the humans disappeared, and the galaxy was starting to crack like old stone under pressure. What had seemed like minor problems at first were growing into disasters that no one knew how to fix. On the mining world of Kepler Station, the atmospheric processors were failing. The massive machines that kept the air breathable had worked perfectly for 40 years under the care of engineer Choi Sang-woo. Now the technicians stared at warning lights they had never seen before. "The oxygen levels are dropping," reported Chief Technician Morketh, his voice tight with worry. "The carbon scrubbers are not responding to standard commands." Station Commander Velrix studied the maintenance logs. Every entry for the past 10 years was signed by the human engineer. The procedures looked simple enough on paper, but when they tried to follow them, nothing worked the way it should. "Contact the manufacturer," Velrix ordered. "Get their technical support team here immediately." 3 days later, the manufacturer's best engineers arrived. They spent a week studying the systems before their lead specialist delivered the bad news. "These are not standard atmospheric processors," she explained. "The human engineer modified them extensively. The changes are so complex that we cannot understand how they work. Our equipment should not be able to maintain atmosphere for a population this large. But somehow it does." "Can you fix them?" Velrix asked. "We can try to restore the original factory settings, but the station will only be able to support about half the current population." In the commercial sector, trade wars were breaking out everywhere. The Zephyrian Trade Federation and the Corvani Commerce Guild had been bitter rivals for centuries. Only human mediators had kept their competition from becoming violent conflict. Ambassador Wei Junsik had spent 15 years carefully balancing trade agreements between the two powers. His contracts were works of art, finding solutions that gave both sides what they needed while preventing either from gaining too much advantage. Now those agreements were falling apart. The Zephyrians claimed the Corvanis were violating shipping lane protocols. The Corvanis accused the Zephyrians of illegal price manipulation. Without human arbitrators to settle disputes, every disagreement became a crisis. Trade Federation Admiral Kexitar sent warships to blockade Corvani cargo routes. The Commerce Guild responded by arming their merchant vessels. Within a week, the first shots were fired. 3 cargo ships and a patrol cruiser were destroyed before both sides realized they were sliding toward a war that would destroy them. Both. "We need the humans back," admitted Trade Federation Chairman Corvell during an emergency session. They understood how to make deals that actually worked. But the humans were gone, and their communication channels remained silent. The problems were not limited to politics and economics. Across the galaxy, systems that had run smoothly for decades were beginning to fail in ways that made no sense. The agricultural world of New Harvest, the crop rotation systems were producing strange results. Dr. Park Min-jung had designed the farming schedules that fed 17 different star systems. Her plan seemed simple enough, but when local farmers tried to follow them, the results were catastrophic. "The soil nutrients are all wrong," reported Agricultural Minister Teclon. "Following the human rotation schedule should have restored the mineral balance, but instead it has made things worse." Soil analysis revealed the problem. Dr. Park's schedules were not just about crop rotation. She had been coordinating with weather control systems, fertilizer shipments, and even the orbital position of the planet's moons to create perfect growing conditions. Without her oversight, the complex system was destroying itself. "How did she keep track of all these variables?" asked the minister. "We do not know," replied the lead scientist. "Her notes mentioned dozens of factors that we did not even know affected crop growth." Similar mysteries were appearing everywhere. On the research station Gamma Lab, experiments that had run for years were producing impossible results. Dr. Kim Tae-hyun had been coordinating 17 different research projects, and somehow his work had made all of them more successful. "The quantum resonance experiments are failing," reported Research Director Nex Thule. "The same procedures that worked perfectly under human supervision now produce random results." "Perhaps the equipment is damaged," suggested a technician. "The equipment is fine, but the human researcher was somehow compensating for variables that our instruments cannot even detect. Without his adjustments, the experiments are worthless." The military situation was becoming desperate. Captain Lee Hyun-woo's anti-piracy fleet had been replaced by ships from various species, but the results were embarrassing. Pirate attacks had increased by 300% in just 6 months. How did one human captain keep the pirates under control? Demanded Admiral Kexnar during a strategy meeting. His fleet was not larger than ours. His ships were not more advanced. Intelligence Officer Veltar pulled up tactical analyses from Lee's previous operations. The human captain did not just patrol the trade routes. He studied pirate behavior, patterns, predicted their movements, and positioned his ships to prevent attacks before they happened. "So we do the same thing," said the Admiral. "We have tried." But Captain Lee's predictions were based on psychological profiles of individual pirate captains, economic analysis of black market prices, and social dynamics within pirate communities. Our computers cannot process that much information, and our officers do not understand how those factors affect military tactics. The Admiral stared at the reports. The human captain had been thinking on a level that other species could not even comprehend. Meanwhile, Counselor Ithquen was making disturbing discoveries in the Council archives. She had been trying to understand how humans had become so important to galactic civilization, and what she found made her nervous. "They were never supposed to be this involved," she told her research team. "When humans first joined the galactic community, they were assigned simple tasks, basic translation work, minor diplomatic missions, routine maintenance jobs." "What changed?" asked her aide. "They kept solving problems that no one else could solve. Every time there was a crisis, humans found a way to fix it. So we gave them more responsibility. And more. And more." The records showed a clear pattern. Humans had not taken over important positions by force or politics. They had simply been better at solving problems than anyone else. Over 3 centuries, they had quietly become the species that everyone depended on for everything. But why did we let it happen? The aide wondered. Because they never said no when we asked for help, and they never asked for anything in return. That night, Counselor Ithquin could not sleep. She kept thinking about something she had read in the old files. Ambassador Baek Soo-jin had once mentioned that humans had different ways of thinking about problems. She had said that humans could see connections that other species missed. At the time, it had seemed like polite conversation. Now it felt like a warning that no one had understood. The galaxy was not just missing human workers or human technology. It was missing the human way of thinking that had held everything together. And without that invisible foundation, civilization itself was starting to collapse. 1 year after humanity went silent, the galaxy was dying. Not slowly, not quietly, but with the screaming chaos of a machine tearing itself apart. What had started as small problems had grown into disasters that threatened entire star systems. Dr. Kilneth sat in his laboratory on the research station Omega-7, staring at data that made no sense. The Zephyrian scientist had spent months analyzing old human research files, trying to understand how they had prevented so many catastrophes. "This cannot be correct," he muttered, checking his calculations for the 100th time. The numbers were clear, but their meaning was terrifying. His assistant, researcher Velkoth, looked over his shoulder at the holographic displays. "What does it show?" According to these files, analyst Cho Min-seok was monitoring 17 different potential extinction events across the galaxy, not theoretical possibilities, actual threats that could wipe out entire civilizations. 17? Velkoth's voice was barely a whisper. "What kind of threats?" Dr. Kilneth pulled up the first file. "The binary star system in the Corvin sector. The gravitational resonance between the two stars creates instabilities that could cause one of them to go supernova. Cho Min-seok was using carefully timed cargo shipments to adjust the mass distribution and prevent the resonance." Cargo shipments? How can moving cargo prevent a star from exploding? The mass of the cargo ships, placed in specific orbits at precise times, created tiny gravitational adjustments that disrupted the resonance pattern. It sounds impossible, but the mathematics are perfect. They moved to the second file. Captain Jeon Eun-ji had been tracking an ancient automated weapons system left over from a war fought 1,000,000 years ago. The weapon was slowly moving through space, and in 300 years it would reach an inhabited system and destroy everything there. She was using survey missions and asteroid mining operations to gradually change the weapon's course, Dr. Kilneth explained. Every time a mining ship extracted materials from asteroids in the weapon's path, it created small gravitational changes that pulled the weapon slightly off course. The third file was even worse. Researcher Han Woo-jin had been monitoring the hyperspace lanes that connected the galaxy's civilizations. The constant use of faster-than-light travel was creating stress fractures in the fabric of space itself. If the fractures connected, they could create a chain reaction that would make interstellar travel impossible forever. He was scheduling maintenance work on hyperspace beacons to create harmonic frequencies that prevented the fractures from growing. Dr. Kilneth read aloud. The maintenance appeared routine, but the timing and frequency were calculated to repair space itself. Velkoth stared at the files in horror. How many people knew about this? According to the records, only the humans working on each project. They never told anyone else because they knew other species would panic. And now they are gone. What happens to these threats? Dr. Kilneth's calculations gave him the answer, but he wished they had not. The binary star system will reach critical resonance in 14 months. The ancient weapon will change course and hit the Velthari homeworld in 200 years. The hyperspace fractures will connect in approximately 50 years, ending galactic civilization. Across the galaxy, similar discoveries were being made. On the agricultural world of New Harvest, the soil was not just losing nutrients, it was becoming toxic. Dr. Park Min-jung's crop rotation had been designed to prevent the buildup of heavy metals that naturally occurred in the planet's ecosystem. Without her careful management, the entire world would be uninhabitable within 5 years. The atmospheric processors on dozens of worlds were not just failing. They were breaking down in ways that would release poisonous gases into the air. Engineer Nam Ji-hai had been preventing these failures with modifications so subtle that no one else had even noticed them. Trade routes that seemed randomly chosen. by human coordinators were actually precisely calculated to avoid areas of space where gravitational anomalies were growing stronger. Without human guidance, ships were beginning to encounter dangerous spatial distortions that could crush a vessel instantly. The magnitude of humanity's secret work was overwhelming. They had not just been maintaining galactic civilization, they had been preventing its complete destruction, quietly and without recognition, for 3 centuries. Counselor Ithquen called an emergency session of the full council. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to hear her report on humanity's hidden activities. "We are not experiencing the breakdown of galactic civilization," she announced to the stunned assembly. "We are experiencing the prevented end of everything. Humanity has been our invisible guardian for 300 years. The silence that followed was broken by Counselor Veltar's desperate question. Can we fix these problems ourselves? Some of them, perhaps. But not all. And not in time. Ithquen displayed the timeline of approaching disasters. "We have months or years to solve problems that humanity spent centuries learning to prevent." Counselor Zephyrim stood up slowly. "Then we must contact them. We must beg them to return." "We have tried," replied Ithquen. "Every attempt to reach human space has failed. Our ships cross into their territory and vanish completely. Then we send more ships, larger fleets. We cannot accept their refusal." But Admiral Kexanar shook his head grimly. "We have lost contact with 12 expeditions to human space. Not destroyed. Not captured. Simply gone. As if they never existed. We are dealing with capabilities we do not understand." The council spent days debating options that did not exist. Some representatives suggested threatening humanity with military action. Others proposed offering them massive payments or territories. A few even suggested surrendering completely and begging humans to rule the galaxy directly. All of these proposals shared the same fatal flaw. They required the ability to communicate with humanity, and humanity was not answering. Finally, Counselor Prime Nexthul made the decision that everyone feared but no one wanted to voice. "We must assume that humanity will not return. We must try to save ourselves." The council divided the approaching disasters among the major civilizations. The Zephyrians would tackle the binary star problem. The Corvanis would try to deal with the ancient weapon. The scientific directorate would work on the hyperspace fractures. But as teams of the galaxy's best experts began studying these problems, the hopelessness of their situation became clear. Humanity had been using knowledge and techniques that other species did not possess. Their solutions required understanding of physics, psychology, and mathematics that went beyond what anyone else had achieved. Dr. Kilneth summed up their situation in a report that made even the bravest council members despair. "We are trying to perform surgery with our eyes closed on a patient we do not understand, using tools we cannot recognize. The humans were not just more skilled than us. They were thinking in ways that we cannot comprehend. The galaxy's greatest civilizations, species that had conquered stars and built wonders that lasted millennia, faced a humbling truth. Without humanity's guidance, they were helpless children playing with forces beyond their control, and somewhere in the darkness of human space, their former guardians remained silent, leaving the galaxy to face the consequences of 3 centuries of dependence on wisdom they had never tried to understand. 2 years had passed since humanity disappeared, and Counselor Zarvek was discovering things in the archive that made him question everything he thought he knew about galactic history. The ancient keeper of records had lived through 4 centuries of galactic politics, but the files he was reading now changed his understanding of it all. "This cannot be right," he whispered to his assistant, Archivist Pelton, as they reviewed the oldest diplomatic records. "According to these documents, we never actually invited humanity to join the galactic community." Pelton checked the classification codes on the files. These were the original records, sealed since humanity's first contact with galactic civilization 300 years ago. "What do they say?" "Humanity simply appeared in our space one day and began helping with problems. They fixed a trade dispute between the Corvanis and the Velthari. They stopped a war between the Zephyrians and the Morden. They solved a famine crisis on the Outer Rim worlds." Zarvek's voice grew more troubled as he read. "We assumed they were seeking membership in the galactic community, but they never actually asked to join. The records showed a strange pattern. Every time the Council had tried to formalize humanity's role in galactic affairs, human representatives had politely avoided the issue. Ambassador Bayek Su-jin had always found reasons to delay official integration ceremonies. Captain Lee Dong-min had declined formal military ranks. Dr. Kim Hae-jin had refused permanent appointment as head of the scientific directorate. They participated in everything, but they never formally agreed to be bound by galactic law, Zarvek realized, with growing unease. They were helping us as equals, not as members of our civilization. Pelton found another disturbing file. Look, at this. Every time humanity solved a major crisis, they submitted reports explaining how other species could handle similar problems in the future. But no one ever read these reports carefully. The teaching documents were detailed and thorough. Humanity had tried to share their knowledge, to show other species how to maintain the systems they had built and solve the problems they had prevented. But the galactic powers had been too busy enjoying the benefits of human expertise to bother learning from it. We treated them like servants, Zarvek said quietly. Brilliant, capable servants who could solve any problem. But we never saw them as teachers. The most disturbing discovery came when they found the classified military analysis that had been sealed 20 years ago. General Kang Tae-min had submitted a strategic assessment that had made the Council so uncomfortable that they had locked it away immediately. Most Council members never saw this report, Pelton noted. It was classified within hours of submission. Zarvek read the document with growing horror. General Kang's analysis was simple and devastating. He had calculated what would happen if humanity ever decided to stop being helpful and start being aggressive instead. The report showed that humanity possessed military capabilities far beyond what they had ever displayed. Their ships were faster and more maneuverable than anything in the galactic fleet. Their weapons technology was centuries ahead of other species. Their strategic thinking was so advanced that they could predict and counter enemy actions before those enemies even made decisions. According to this analysis, humanity could conquer the entire galaxy within 6 months, Zarvek read aloud. They have the technology, the tactics, and the industrial capacity to defeat all galactic civilizations simultaneously. But they never used these capabilities, Pelton observed. That is what made the Council so uncomfortable. Humanity was powerful enough to rule the galaxy, but they chose to serve it instead. Zarvek set down the report with shaking hands. We were living under the protection of beings who could have enslaved us all, and we never realized it. The implications were staggering. For 3 centuries, humanity had possessed the power to take whatever they wanted from galactic civilization. Instead, they had spent their time fixing problems, preventing wars, and maintaining systems that other species could not manage alone. Meanwhile, in the deeper archives, Chief Archivist Kexalon was making his own disturbing discoveries. He had been searching for any records of why humanity might have withdrawn from galactic affairs, and what he found was a pattern of increasing frustration in human diplomatic communications. Look at these message logs from Ambassador Park Tae-ho, he told his research team. Over the past 50 years, his tone gradually changed from eager cooperation to weary resignation. The messages showed humanity's growing disappointment with galactic civilization. They had offered to teach other species how to prevent wars, but those species preferred to let humans handle their conflicts. They had tried to share advanced technologies, but other civilizations wanted only the benefits, not the responsibility, that came with such power. Humanity wanted partners, Kexalon realized. They wanted to work with equals who could learn and grow and take responsibility for their own problems. Instead, they found species that preferred to remain dependent children. The final message in Ambassador Park's files was dated just 1 week before humanity's withdrawal announcement. It was a personal note to a human colleague, never meant for alien eyes but preserved in the diplomatic archives by accident. I am tired, Minjun, the message read. We have spent 3 centuries trying to help them become better than they are. But they do not want to improve. They want us to solve their problems forever while they pursue their own pleasures. We are not teachers to them. We are caretakers for a galactic civilization that refuses to grow up. The message continued with words that made Kexalon's blood run cold. The Council has asked us to handle the Velthari succession crisis, the Corvani trade war, and the Zephyrian border dispute all in the same month. They act as if these are simple tasks that we should be honored to perform. They do not understand that each of these problems requires months of careful work to solve properly. They think we are magical beings who can fix anything instantly. We cannot continue like this. Either they learn to solve their own problems, or we will have to make the difficult choice to let them face the consequences of their dependence. I pray it does not come to that, but I fear it will. The message was dated 3 years ago. Humanity had been planning their withdrawal for years, trying to find ways to force galactic civilization to become self-sufficient. But the other species had resisted every attempt to reduce their dependence on human guidance. Kexalon shared his findings with the Council, and the reaction was a mixture of shame and terror. They finally understood that humanity's withdrawal was not an act of abandonment. It was an act of desperate teaching, a final attempt to force the galaxy to learn self-reliance. They did not leave because they stopped caring about us, Counselor Ithquin said quietly. They left because they cared too much to let us remain helpless forever. But understanding humanity's motivation did not solve the galaxy's problems. The disasters were still approaching, and the other species still lacked the knowledge and wisdom to prevent them. The truth was becoming clear to everyone. Humanity had been the only adults in a galaxy full of children, and now the children had to learn to take care of themselves or face the consequences of their refusal to grow up. 5 years after humanity went silent, the galaxy was dying in slow motion. Entire star systems had been abandoned as their life support systems failed. 3 species had gone extinct from preventable disasters. The great trade routes that had connected civilizations for millennia were now dangerous paths through space, filled with hazards that no one knew how to avoid. Counselor Prime Nexthul stood in her private chambers, staring at the reports that covered her desk like a funeral. Shroud. The Corvan binary star system would reach critical resonance in 2 months. The ancient weapon was still moving toward the Velthari homeworld. The hyperspace fractures were growing larger every day, and soon interstellar travel would become impossible. She had tried everything. The best scientists in the galaxy had worked day and night to solve the problems that humanity had prevented so easily. Military fleets had attempted to reach human space with messages of surrender and pleas for help. Diplomatic missions had offered humanity control of entire sectors in exchange for their return. Nothing had worked. Every ship that crossed into human territory simply vanished, not destroyed but erased, as if they had never existed. The silence from humanity was absolute and terrifying. "There is only one option left," she told her aide. "I will go myself." "Counselor Prime, that is suicide," the aide protested. 12 expeditions have been lost in human space. We cannot risk losing you as well." "The galaxy is already lost," Nexthul replied quietly. "If I do not try this, billions will die and our civilization will end. If I die trying to reach them, at least I will die with purpose." She took the fastest ship in the Council fleet and set course for the Sol system, humanity's ancient home. Her crew was volunteers only, beings who understood that this was likely a one-way journey. As they crossed the boundary into human space, they prepared for the same fate that had claimed all the others. But this time, something different happened. Instead of vanishing into nothingness, their ship was gently stopped by forces they could not understand. The stars around them shifted, and suddenly they were in orbit around a blue and green world that could only be Earth. A transmission came, threw on frequencies that had been silent for 5 years. The voice was calm, professional, and achingly familiar. "This is Director O.G. Wan of the Human Diplomatic Corps. State your business, Counselor Prime." Nexthul nearly collapsed with relief at hearing a human voice again. "Director O, I come to beg for the galaxy's life. We know we were wrong. We know we failed you. But billions of innocent beings are going to die because of our mistakes." There was a long pause before Director O responded. "You say you know you were wrong. Tell me what you learned." "We learned that you were never our servants. You were our teachers, and we refused to learn. We learned that you could have conquered us all, but you chose to help us instead. We learned that you spent centuries trying to make us better, and we wasted every chance you gave us. Another pause. And what would you have us do with this knowledge? Nexthol's voice broke as she delivered the message she had prepared for this moment. We surrender, completely and unconditionally. Take control of the galaxy. Rule us directly. We cannot govern ourselves, and we cannot solve our own problems. We need you to save us from our own failures. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. When Director O finally spoke, her voice carried a sadness that cut through the transmission like a blade. That is exactly what I feared you would say. But it is what you wanted, is it not? To rule the galaxy? No, Counselor Prime. It is the opposite of what we wanted. Director O's voice became formal, as if she were delivering a prepared statement. Humanity withdrew from galactic affairs because we refused to become your permanent caretakers. We wanted to teach you to stand on your own. Instead, you learned only that you preferred to kneel. The transmission continued, each word landing like a physical blow. You had 5 years to learn self-reliance, 5 years to solve your own problems and prove that you could survive without us. Instead, you spent those years looking for ways to bring us back to fix things for you. But the disasters, Nexthol pleaded. The binary star, the ancient weapon, the hyperspace fractures. Only humanity can prevent these catastrophes. Yes, we can prevent them. But we will not. Not anymore. The words hit Nexthol like ice water. You would let billions die? We tried to prevent this outcome for 3 centuries, Director O replied. We gave your civilizations every opportunity to learn, to grow, to become capable of handling their own problems. You chose comfort over growth, dependence over independence. These disasters are not punishments. They are the natural consequences of the choices your species have made. Then there is no hope? You will not help us at all? Director O was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a different tone, one that might have been compassion mixed with infinite weariness. We will offer you one final choice, Counselor Prime. One last opportunity to prove that galactic civilization can learn to grow up. What choice? We will return to the galaxy. We will teach your species how to prevent the approaching disasters and maintain the systems that keep your civilizations alive. But this time, we return as teachers, not as caretakers. Your species must learn to do the work themselves. They must take responsibility for their own survival. Nexthol felt hope flicker in her chest. And if we refuse, if we insist that you solve our problems for us, then we will leave again. Permanently this time. And we will take steps to ensure that we can never be found, no matter how desperately you search for us. The transmission continued with terms that were both generous and terrifying. Humanity would spend 50 years teaching other species how to manage their own civilizations. They would share their knowledge, their techniques, their ways of thinking about complex problems. But at the end of those 50 years, they would withdraw again, and this time, there would be no return. 50 years to learn what we should have taught you in 3 centuries, Director O explained. If you cannot become self-sufficient in that time, then your civilizations deserve whatever fate awaits them. And if we succeed, if we learn to solve our own problems? For the first time in the conversation, Director O's voice carried something that might have been hope. Then perhaps we can finally be what we always wanted to be. Not your guardians or your rulers, but your partners. Equals working together to build something greater than any of us could achieve alone. Nexthol closed her eyes, understanding the magnitude of the choice before her. Humanity was offering the galaxy one last chance to grow up. One final opportunity to prove that they could be more than eternal children, dependent on human wisdom. I accept your terms, she said. On behalf of the galactic community, I accept. Then we will return. But remember, Counselor Prime, this is your last chance. Use it well. As her ship was gently guided back toward galactic space, Nexthol prepared to deliver the most important message in galactic history. Humanity was coming home, but as teachers, not saviors. The galaxy would have 50 years to learn to save itself. Whether they succeeded or failed would determine if galactic civilization had any future at all.